All right, everybody, here we go. Parshat Vayera. Sorry, that was last week. Haha. Parshat Chayei, special edition. Baruch Hashem, I have a simcha, an event in the show, so we're doing it from some of the private residence. If you hear any kids screaming, that's just us torturing the kids. A regular evening, nothing to see. Go about your life, citizens. Okay, so we're going to try to tie in today's lesson to what's going on around the world. A lot of Jews are under a lot of pressure, a lot of anxiety. The question is, when do Jews give in? When do Jews give in and say, something? Too much. Too much hate, too much this, too much, just too. And everyone hates us, or it's just too hard. What's the answer? Do we hide? Do we take off our yarmulke, take off our mezuzah, go underground, change our name from Cohen to not Kaplan. Jewish Dean? To what? Kaplan, exactly. Right? How do we deal with spiritual anxiety, physical anxiety from within, from without? So although I know it's month of Cheshvan, and we're just a little bit over a month away from Hanukkah, but we're actually going to tie into this week's Parsha to the story of Hanukkah. And once we're in the story of Hanukkah already, we can deal with anti-Semitism and everything else. All right? Like I saw one clip of a guy he said, I want to thank everybody who's against the Jews, because very soon we're going to have another holiday. Because you know how it is. Gentiles try to destroy the Jewish people. We obviously win, because we always do. We have a holiday. So he says, thank you very much, because I get another day off work or something like that. Okay. So, so keep in mind, right, the question for the class is, when do you give in, right? At what point is the breaking point? Let's start off with this week's parsha, okay? This week's parsha, we're not going to quote a verse. We're going to quote a midrash based on a verse. Usually we quote a verse. And this week we don't have it. We also don't have the slideshow, so you're just going to have to follow along. Or trust me.
One quick question. You use the term midrash, you also say medrash.
Same thing.
That's what I want to be sure.
Yeah, so I grew up saying midrash, but most people say midrash, so because this class is not, I'm not talking to myself, unless you guys fall asleep. I am talking to myself, so in the beginning of the class I said midrash, and at the end of the class I said medrash, because you guys drift off, right? All right, so in this week's Torah portion, we have, in the beginning of the Torah portion, Chayei passes away. Sarah passes away. The portion is called Chayei. Sarah passes away. Avram purchases the cave of Machpelah. He buries Sarah. And after he buries Sarah, Avram says, listen, I gotta marry off my son. Here the guy is 40 years old, and he's still living at home. You think today's bad? Failure to launch, exactly. He's 40 years old. He's not. Huh? Hebron, yeah.
That's why it took me 16 years to get my bachelor's.
There you go. You should know, by the way, now it's safer to go than it was in previous years. Because now they have a guarded road the entire way. Used to be it was dangerous. You had to go on a bulletproof bus. Now to go to Hebron is very safe.
When we went, it was also safe. Because it was before they had a lot of uprisings.
Mid-70s, right? Yeah. So we should know, all the problems started when the Israelis gave away Sinai from Camp David. And the Rebbe predicted it. He said, "You think it's a sign of peace? It's not. It's a sign of weakness." And after that, there were all the problems. Anyway, so Avram sends his servant Eliezer to where he's from, Haran. Okay, Avram does not allow Eliezer to take a bride for Yitzchak from the land of Canaan, because he is from the son of Shemites. And the people of Canaan were from the children of Ham. And if you remember from the portion of Noach, remember, after what Cham and Canaan did, Noah curses Cham and blesses Shem. And he says, a blessed person doesn't marry a cursed one, so he doesn't not allow Eliezer to take a bride for Yitzchak from the land of Canaan. Go to where I'm from, go to Haran, where you find either people from Shem or from the family of Yafet, and look for a bride over there. And there's a whole, conversation. Eliezer goes, he meets Rivka. That part we're not going to get into. But the part we are going to get into is that Eliezer brings Rivka back, and it says there that Yitzchak was comforted after the loss of his mother. And this is interesting because this ties in. This is kind of the bookend, where it says in the beginning of Genesis, in the beginning of Bereshis, where after Hashem creates Chava, it says, therefore a man will leave his home, become one with his wife, and they become like one person. So, and based on here is that a person the only person that can really comfort someone at the loss of their parents is their spouse. Specifically a man, for his mother, his wife. Anyway, interesting. Interesting psychological analysis based on this week's Torah Parsha. But let's get into the Midrash, or the Midrash for Larry. So it says that what was it that Yitzchak saw that he was comforted after the loss of his mother? So here we go to text number 1. So it says that as long as Sarah was alive, there were 3 miracles that happened the entire week. Number 1, the candles would stay burning from Friday to Friday. Number 2, the challah would stay fresh. And number 3, there was a cloud over her tent. The cloud in the Torah usually symbolizes the Shekhinah, right? Like over the tabernacle, the Mishkan, there was the cloud. So once Sarah passed away, these 3 things ceased. When Yitzchak married Rivka, the 3 miracles came back. So now, this is not the only time we have stories of supernatural oil. Interesting, we have a lot of stories of oil in the Torah. Jewish people are compared to oil. Just like oil doesn't mix, so too the Jewish people can't integrate. We spoke about this in Shabbos. No matter how much we try, we can't. And even Bilam, the Gentile prophet, called us, we're a nation that dwells alone.
It's interesting you should say that, because oil and alcohol mix.
Oil and alcohol mix.
Yeah,
Right. Oil, where's the oil? Where's the oil?
No, you said oil does not mix. It does. Oil will mix with alcohol.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting. All right, we'll have to try it. Okay, so now in last week's Haftorah, we had, remember the story of Elisha who brought the child back to life. Now there are many stories. I think the Book of Kings records 16 miracles with Elisha, which is incredible because a lot of great people did a lot of great things, but to be recorded in the Torah, it's I think Eliyahu is 8, Elisha 16. So one of the miracles is with the miracle of oil. It's a very interesting miracle over here that Eliyahu was in a time of Achav. You know what Achav was? Achav was against religious practice. He was a self-hating Jew, and he was against religious practice, and he hunted down the rabbis or the prophets. Now there were some people that protected these prophets. Protection meaning they hid them and they had to feed them. Imagine feeding all these people. So there was a prophet who actually worked in the court of Achav. His name was Avadia. He himself is a prophet as well. He's recorded in the book of Chayei, the last book of the Tanakh, not the last book. The last book of the prophets, I should say, is a book called Chayei, the book of 13 prophets. Because instead of being like Isaiah, 60 chapters, each one is like 2, 3, 1. So in one book you have 13 different prophets. One of them is Avadia. You ever heard of Avadia?
You mentioned him once.
Avadia actually was a convert to Judaism from the children of Esav, and Achav wanted him as an advisor. So Achav's kitchen, you should know, was kosher because Avadia is not going to eat not kosher. So much did he treasure Avadia's opinion that Achav's kitchen was kosher, even though he wasn't religious at all. He worshipped idols and everything else. So this Avadia, he protected and he housed a bunch of prophets. I think 100. To feed 100 people every day, 3 times a day. It's a lot. So he went into debt. So in the story over here, this woman goes over. I mean, I'm telling the preface to text 2. This woman goes to Elisha and says, "You knew my husband. Avadia died or young. You knew my husband. Why would Elisha know her husband?" So Midrash says that because they were fellow prophets, and now I'm in debt. Avadia borrowed a tremendous amount of money to feed these prophets, and he died young. And I'm saddled with all this debt. I have 2 young kids, and what do I do? So Avadia says, "Okay, what do you have in the house?" "I have nothing. The only thing I have is oil." Now, today, oil is for food. And in the olden days, we find this in halacha as well. Like, for example, it says, on Yom Kippur, you can't anoint yourself with oil. Because in the olden days, people didn't bathe all the time. Or one of the things people did was, especially if you were wealthy, you would douse yourself in fragmented oil. It would smell good. So if a person went outside, anointed with oil that smelled nice, it was a sign that they were well-to-do. She says, basically, I'm living a whole facade. On the outside, I'm showing everybody that I'm okay, but really, all I got is oil. That's it. So Elisha tells her, "Okay, I want you to borrow as many pots and pots and jugs and utensils as possible. I want you to close the door, and I want you to fill up the jugs." So although she had only 1 jug of oil, the oil didn't stop. She was able to fill up. You see in text number 2, she said that she poured from the vessel, and it poured and it poured and poured. Finally, she asks her son, bring the next utensil, and he says, "There is no more," and that's it. No, the oil stopped. Then Elisha said, "Okay, so now go sell the oil, pay back your debtors," and that's the story. So that's another story of miraculous oil. The third story, obviously, is the Hanukkah story, right? Famous story, Hanukkah. That we say in davening. This is text number 3. That when the Yevonim, Syrian Greeks, went into the temple and they defiled the oil, because if you remember from last year, it's not that there wasn't oil. How could you be in Israel no olive oil? It's Israel. It's the Middle East. There's always olive oil. But they defiled it. They couldn't use it. But they found 1 jug, and it only had enough to burn for 1 night. It burned for 8 nights, and now all the parents have to go into hak because they have to buy their kids presents for 8 nights. No? Isn't that the end of the story?
I never did that.
Oh, I did. I would get the Torah first, a Torah at the end, and in the middle you get socks one night, you get underwear one night, so things that they need.
A piece of chocolate.
So
We just used to get Levi like 4 or 5 gifts, and that was it.
Okay. So okay. So now comes some questions. Why do we go crazy with Hanukkah? Do you know Hanukkah is the longest holiday?
Is that?
The longest holiday? Sukkot is 7 days. Pesach is 7 days. Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah, it's a separate holiday.
Yeah, but it's like a day each.
No, Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah is really 1 day. In the diaspora, it's 2 days. But really, it's a 1 day holiday. Sukkot is 7-day holiday.
Yom Kippur's 1 holiday.
Right, so Rosh Hashanah 2 days. Hanukkah, I understand it's a miracle, but I understand it's a miracle. It's a cool miracle. I'm not downplaying it. But 8 days, don't you think you're going a little crazy here?
You might not in the diaspora 9 days.
Exactly.
Well, isn't it because it takes 8 days to get the right kind of oil?
No, that's not the reason. So what happened was, you're sort of right, but it's because, the reason why 8 days is because when a person touches a dead body or kills somebody, even if you're in an army doing it for all the right reasons, you're impure for 7 days. So they couldn't make new oil. That's why. So, but if you're doing math, Sarah put in 3 hours worth of oil, and it lasted a whole week. You know how much oil they put in the menorah in the temple? 12 hours worth of oil. They put 12 hours worth of oil every day in the temple. The same amount, summer, winter, 12 hours worth of oil, no matter what. So if you're doing the math, I mean, Sarah's was really a greater miracle. Think about it. Because it burned for, if you're doing in proportionate everything else, Sarah's miracle is a greater miracle. And we have other burning miracles. I don't know, Moses stood by a burning bush. It didn't burn. I mean, where's our holiday? That's it. Let me tell the Gentile boss, we're taking another day off work.
Passover.
Well, it didn't happen on Passover.
No, but it's part of the story.
Yeah, exactly. So why? Exactly, another holiday. So why are we going crazy with Hanukkah? All right, section 2. Actually, in section 2, we're going to go to the question for discussion on page 78. We're going to talk about miracles. How do you think this question is discussed in various commentaries, talking about the Hanukkah miracle? What was the miracle? So it was the miracle. Was the oil miraculously replenished, or the oil simply not consumed, leaving the cups filled with oil for the next night? What was the miracle exactly? So we know we put oil for one day and it burned for 8 days. How did it burn for 8 days? Did it burn 1/8 every night? Or did it not burn for 8 days and then all of a sudden the 8th day it burned normal? Or did it burn and then God made a miracle, came back up? What do you say?
Okay, there was one jug of oil they found.
Yeah.
So they put it in the menorah.
Yeah.
And they must have divided it among all the. Oh, wait a minute.
One jug means not for one cup. One
Right.
jug means for 8, right?
Yeah.
For all 7 cups.
But
Yeah.
wait a second.
Yep. I'm waiting.
The
Are we talking
menorah.
about seven flames?
Yeah, the menorah had only 7 branches, not 8. Right?
Okay, so.
Well, I'm just thinking. So they.
No, it was 3 and 3 and 1.
Okay, so I don't know where you're going with
Well,
this.
no. What I'm saying is they had to divide it by 7.
Okay.
They had to fill it. So I would say the miracle was that the oil just never burned off for 8 days.
So it remained the same level. It came 8th day, bam, went down. That's what you said. And at some point, the oil did burn, right?
Yeah.
When did the oil burn?
Well, it had to burn on the first day, a little bit, because you got to get the flame started.
You know, if you want to get real technical about it, the first day could have only been 10 minutes, but it was still the first day. In other words, we're 10 minutes into the first day, we were now on the second day.
What?
And then
Why?
this-
What?
I'm saying let's look at it from the clock point of view.
Okay.
Okay, you've got 7 hours in which you can light the candle and still be kosher. Just hear me out. You've got 7 hours during which you can light the candle and be considered the day. I'm just picking a number at random.
Okay.
Okay. If you light it during the first hour, the second hour, or the third hour, you're still within that 7-hour period. So at the end of 6.5 hours, you light the candle, and it burned during the first day, so it's considered one day. Now, toward the end, all right, day number 7, the candle keeps burning until it gets into part of the 8th day. So now, this is just, I'm just being devil's advocate here.
I know,
So
but
you go
let
from
me
the end of the
explain to you.
first
One
day-
second. Let me explain to you how the temple service worked. Let me explain to you how the temple service worked.
Well, it's not just that I'm talking about. I'm just saying you could conceivably say that it burned for 8 days when it only burned for 6 days
No.
and 2 little
No,
fractions.
no. So you're making up your own thing. It burned for
Okay,
8,
go ahead.
but it burned for 8 nights. So the way it worked in the temple was they lit the menorah in the afternoon. They would clean out the previous day's wicks, whatever it is, in the morning, and they would fill up the oil, and then the Kohen Gadol would light it during the day in the afternoon. I mean, it burned for 8 entire nights.
Entire nights.
No. So they relit the menorah. It's not like they didn't light the menorah every day. They lit the menorah every day. It's not like they lit the menorah one day and then it stayed lit.
It burns out, and then they clean it out, and they put new oil and new.
They didn't have new oil. What new oil?
No, I'm just saying normally.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's the miracle? So this question, by the way, is a lot of commentaries. It's also related to the question. Not exactly, but it's related to the question. Is if they had enough oil for one day. I'm not going to get into this, but there's something to think about. If they had enough oil for one day, how many days was the miracle? 7. Hanukkah should be 7 days, not 8 days.
Which goes back to what I was saying.
No.
Okay, well, wait.
What?
So, but you said it takes 8 days.
7 days to get pure, and eighth day they make the oil. 8 days.
Okay, so there's the 8 days.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so let's look at Rabbi Yosef Karo, the author of the first Shulchan Aruch, and he gives a couple answers, and we're going to study that. But again, there's a lot more than these 2 answers. I think to the second question I said, why is the first day a miracle? I think there are over 100 answers given to that question. 100 different answers. One of the most famous answers is just finding the oil was miraculous. So the first day is celebrating the military victory, but it's not really true because it doesn't really say that anywhere in the Gemara or in the Code of Jewish Law. Okay, let's get into text number 4. Rabbi Yosef Karo says they divided the oil. So one opinion is they divided the oil into 8 equal parts and poured 1/8 into the candelabra each night. That's one way of looking at it. So the fact that you only had so 12 divided by 8 is unbelievable. You guys, you're no good. 1.6. What is it? 1.4. Right? So and 1.5 actually. And so it had a lot less, and then but it burned for the entire night. That's one answer. Another possibility, he says that they poured all the oil into the candelabra each night, and the cruise remained full as before. I mean, it was like consumed, and then it came back. Just whoop. Take this candle you can't blow out.
But you said the candles were extinguished or went out at the end of the evening into the morning. So
in the morning,
they had to add more oil manually.
But the oil was there. When it came back and the flame was out, the oil filled up.
The flame was out and the oil was there.
That's one answer.
The flame did not consume the oil.
Let's
Unless
get
somebody was there watching it, you wouldn't know.
Okay. So now why are we arguing about this? I mean, we the kids. It's a miracle. Who cares? Why did the chicken cross the road? Who cares? Who cares? Why do you Jews have to argue? You have your latkes, you have your donuts. Be quiet.
Don't bother me with the facts. Just tell me the ending.
Exactly. Right. What's that line from the criminal show? Just the facts, ma'am.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
just the facts, Dragnet.
That would be Dragnet.
Yeah. Okay. So the rule is like this. When you do a mitzvah, you have to do the mitzvah down here in this world. Having all the intentions or all these miraculous things doesn't help. A mitzvah has to be done with down here in this material world, in the normal world. That's actually a very interesting story. Since we're coming up to Yud Kislev, and when Alter Rebbe was released from prison, and now we're in the period between Sukkot and Hanukkah. When Alter Rebbe was in prison, so the prison was on one side of the river, and the government office where they were interrogating him was on the other side of the river. So whenever they wanted to question Alter Rebbe, they would ferry him across the river. So one time the Alter Rebbe was going across the river, and he saw the moon, and he wanted to once a month we do the blessing on the moon, second week of the month. So he asked the guy to stop the boat. So the guy says, "Okay, get out of here. Listen to a prisoner. Go fly a kite." So Alter Rebbe asks him again. He refuses. All of a sudden the boat stops. Stop, the guy's boat's not moving. So the Alter Rebbe says the first paragraph, which is not a blessing, then asks the guy to stop the boat. So the guy says, "If I stop the boat, you give me a blessing?" See, the Alter Rebbe wrote down a blessing for him. Now this, by the way, this paper with Alter Rebbe wrote down a blessing, you can see a picture of it. The family still has it. It's been passed down from father to son since the late 1700s. So the paper is like 200 something years old. It's in a frame. If you remind me, I'll find the article, I'll send it to you. So the Chassidim asked the question: if the Alter Rebbe, through his being a tzaddik, a righteous person, was able to miraculously stop the boat, why did he ask the guy permission? Why didn't he just do the blessing of the sanctification of the moon like that? So the answer is because the mitzvah has to take place in a normal way. So, can you use miraculous oil for the menorah? The answer is no. Let me give you a side halachic issue. There's certain problems in the Gemara, but the Gemara can't figure it out. We don't know. We're stumped. So it says when the Mashiach comes, Eliyahu Navi is going to tell us the answer. So what do the rabbis say? What do you mean Eliyahu Navi is going to tell us the answer? The Torah was given to us down here. You can't just come with his hocus pocus and say this is the answer. Why? Because you're Eliyahu Navi, automatically you're right? You know, look at me. I have a fake badge. I mean, what is it? I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express. It doesn't work that way. So the rabbis answered, no, first Eliyahu Navi is going to learn it. He's going to be taught by the boss. And he's going to understand it. And once he understands it and he internalized as a physical human being, then he'll be able to teach it to us. The Torah and mitzvot have to be down here. Like you see in the... You see text 5a. Only olive oil is kosher for the candelabra. This means here that oil extracted from a natural olive that grows on a natural olive tree. The Torah goes out of its way many times to show how things go in a natural way. So if the olive oil would miraculously fill up after day 1, could you use that oil for day 2? No. And if an eighth of an oil only burns, and you can't, before I said this sentence, let me preface it. You can't do something relying on a miracle. So on the first day, one of the answers was they put an eighth amount of oil, right? Mm-hmm. Why would they do that? What, they knew a miracle was going to happen? They had no idea a miracle was going to happen. For all they knew, they said, we're going to light the menorah once. At least let's do the mitzvah once, right? Which, by the way, is another side lesson. Sometimes we get so caught up on perfection. You know, perfect is the enemy of good, right? So here we learn a separate lesson. Just do whatever you can now. Whatever happens tomorrow, happens tomorrow. Isn't it more reasonable to assume they put a full amount of oil in the menorah the first day? The second day, fine. But the first day, it makes more sense they put the whole amount, no? Think they could rely on a miracle? You're not allowed to rely on miracles. You're not allowed to go jumping off the roof. You know, are you familiar with the story of Hanani, Mishael, and Azariah?
Who?
In the book of Daniel, there's a story, and Nebuchadnezzar wanted these 3 rabbis to go against religion, whatever it is, and he threatened them with death. And they said, okay. And he threw them into the fire, and God made a miracle, they survived. And Maimonides and other commentaries say, the takeaway from the story is that they were ready to give up their life. When they went in, they didn't think God was going to save them. They said, listen, we're not giving up on our religion and we're dying as a Jew. Now the fact that God saved them was a bonus, was a plus. But to assume that God loves me and therefore I'm going to jump off the cliff, you're not allowed to do that.
You're going to go splat.
Exactly. In fact, in halacha, it says, Ein somchen ala nes. We do not rely on miracles. So you think they went and put an eighth amount of oil inside? As they say in Yiddish, shvacha meises. Doesn't make sense. So now we got a big problem. So how do they go about? Now, if you see in text number 5, when they put the oil in, they had to put the entire, text 5b, sorry. They had to put the entire amount, which is 12 hours. Okay, so we have the 2 opinions of Rabbi Yosef Karo. Now let's get into a third opinion. Now, we're used to God. There's certain miracles we're kind of used to. That we have nature, and then we have God. When God needs to intercede, split the sea, make it rain bread, turn the water into blood, or fill in whatever miracle you need at the time, right? But can God do something miraculous in the natural order? So, for example, can God make an elephant fit through the hole of a pin needle? So usually you think no. Either God's going to make the elephant really small, or He'll make the elephant really big. But the question isn't making the elephant small or making the hole large. The question is, can the elephant being the elephant and the hole of needle being the hole of the needle, can this get through there? So usually we think of
because the answer to that question is you look through the eye of the needle up close and you can see the whole elephant.
no, to put the elephant through, and you not see it
Put it
through the hole.
It's a camel.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can make it, you can affect it.
But no, what he's saying, can you physically do it?
No, physically you cannot do it.
So normally when we ask,
You can.
when we ask God so usually when a person thinks of godly miracles, so God will make the elephant smaller, He'll make the hole larger, right? Can you fit a square into a circle? No. Can you be moving and stationary at the same time? No, because that's the way our minds work. But now we're going to learn something that Chassidus teaches. And this we're going to learn is text 6a is from the Rebbe Rashab. Rebbe Rashab, we celebrated his birthday 2 days ago on Shabbos, 20th of Cheshvan. And this, by the way, one second. Let's get a little Kabbalistic, okay? An idea that's popped into my head.
Oops. It doesn't show.
I don't know if you see the smoke. In Kabbalah, it talks about the concept of tzimtzum. Tzimtzum means contraction. That in order for God to create the world, He had to move Himself, He had to hide His presence. Otherwise, no other existence can be. Because in the presence of God, what else can be? So He had to hide His presence. So there was a big debate amongst Kabbalists and rabbis. Did God remove His presence or hide His presence? For many, many years, the understanding was God created a vacuum. He removed His presence, and in that vacuum, He created existence as we know it. Came along Isaac Luria, Moshe Cordovero, the Kabbalists of the 15th century, and they, based on text and different things, they proved or they learned that no, that God is the same present as He is before and after creation. Nothing has affected God's presence. So God is present and hidden simultaneously. Now for us, it's impossible. So one of the things Chassidus tells us, that God is impossible of all impossibles. He's not just impossible, He can make the water stand. That's not impossible enough. That's child's play. And impossible to make bread rain down from the heavens, that's not impossible. That's miraculous. What really gets godly is when you're impossible of all impossibilities. Not to supersede the physical nature, but in nature, it should be supernatural. Now, we say the word, but it's kind of like that. Look at what the Rebbe Rashab writes in text 6a. It says, Rabbi Yosef Albo wrote in the book of Ikarim that some things are impossible for God. For example, He can't make the diagonal diameter of a square equal to its side. The author of Ikarim was wrong. It's interesting. Usually one rabbi doesn't tell another rabbi he's wrong. He's wrong because in fact, nothing is impossible. You see a veritable example of this in the Holy Temple. So I'll say it outside. So the temple, in the temple, in the back room, it's called the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh HaKodeshim. Now, in that Holy of Holies was a rectangular box called the Ark of the Covenant, right? This Ark of the Covenant was 2.5 amot by 1.5 amot by 1.5 amot. Okay. Now let's take the tabernacle, the Mishkan, which this room here was 10 amot. Okay, 10 amot is about 15 feet. 1.5, it's really more. It's really about 18 inches, whatever. Yeah, 18 and 22 inches. All right, we'll go with 1.5, 18 inches. Okay, so 10 amot, 15 feet. So now, if let's say here's your wall and here's your wall. If you measure from here to here, so let's say you put a smack dab in the middle and it's 10 amot. This is 2.5. So you're left with 7.5 amot, right? So figure it should be like, I don't know, 3.5 amot here, 3.25, 3.25. But no, if you measure from this wall to here, it would be 5 amot. Measure from this wall to here, it would be 5 amot. It was there. You can look at it, you can touch it, but it didn't take up space. What I just said? It was there, but it didn't take up space. How can that be? Oh. That's because he's God. He's capable of this paradox. All right? I was going to say it makes sense, but...
Don't say so.
Hey, if Star Trek can have warp drive, we could have the...
Exactly.
I'll make believe I understood your Star Trek reference. So now we can get into we see this in nature. Let's get a little natural, a little scientific, right? Look at text 6b. Right? I don't know about anything about quantum mechanics, but we know there's waves and we know there are particles. Waves and particles are different. But yet that's on the regular level. But on the subatomic level, atoms behave like both. Let's look at text 6b. This is Paul Sutton. Is it a wave or a particle? Is it a wave or is it a particle? This seems like a very simple question. Waves are a very distinct phenomena in our universe as our particles, as we have different sets of mathematics to describe each of them. So if we want to go about describing the entire universe, this appears to be a very handy classification scheme, except when it isn't. And if it is in one of the most important aspects of the universe, the subatomic world, when it comes to things like photons and electrons, the answer to the question is, do they behave like waves or particles? The answer is?
Both.
Yes. Yeah. Right? Or the teloi, like you'd like to say. Right?
Hey, quantum mechanics means absolutely everything to me.
So now we can get into. I actually said this before. I don't know if you realized you said it, but now we can get into what we said before. Can oil be combustible and not consume at the same time? Normally not.
Normally not.
But
We have
A
to
bush
look at
that's on
the-
fire usually is consumed, and yet it wasn't.
it wasn't. So
Oil does not
is it?
burn.
So meaning
Well, it's the wick that burns.
The wick doesn't burn either. It's the vapor.
Oh, okay.
It's the
This
oil
is true.
vapor, which is in itself is not truly oil. It's a different state.
okay.
A matter.
All right. So all the other answers.
Moving right along.
Exactly. All the other answers were based on this idea that oil has to burn. So how do you explain that oil burned and they had enough? Because you were thinking about it through your lens of experience, right? The physical world. A plus B has to equal C. But now that Rebbe Rashab told us that no. God can be here and not here at the same time, then we can have oil that burns. You see the fire, but it doesn't consume the oil. And it makes perfect sense. So now, is the oil miraculous?
The oil itself, not truly.
No, it's not miraculous.
Oil itself is not.
So can you use the oil again tomorrow night? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get into what the Rebbe says on text number 7. He says like this. This is page 82. It says, rather than the oil being consumed and then miraculously replenished, we suggest that the oil was consumed and remained intact simultaneously. This entails a miracle of opposites. It says natural flame or candlelight must consume its fuel. And Hanukkah did that, right? Because it has to be a natural flame. Yet the volume of oil was not diminished in the least. It was combustion and non-combustion simultaneously. Now, it's hard for us to wrap our minds around it. Because how could it be and not be at the same time? But that's exactly what makes the miracle of Hanukkah such a crazy miracle. And now we're going to get into why Hanukkah is such a big deal.
The first renewable energy source.
Exactly. So so Elon Musk doesn't have anything on.
No,
right? If
sure
you can tap into, if you imagine you fill up your gas tank, you never have to fill it up again. Hey.
No, when you drive it, it continues to fill itself.
Right? No, that's not what we're saying. It's combustible, but it doesn't decrease. And your gas gauge is not broken.
See, son?
So now let's go back to Rabbi Yosef Karo, because we kind of threw Rabbi Yosef Karo under the bus. The Beis Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Karo, we said, he don't know what he's talking about. But we're talking about over here Rabbi Yosef Karo. Yosef Karo, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, Beis Yosef, the leader, the venerable leader of Sephardic Jewry. And when Rabbi Yosef Karo says something, you don't just dismiss it. When he speaks, you listen. So now, in text number 4, Rabbi Yosef Karo presented two different scenarios. One was they put an eighth, and one was if it decreased and then filled up. But it is a slight variation. So he said, and the Rebbe says that Rabbi Yosef Karo actually supports this idea of the combustible, not combustible, because he says, look at text 8a. He says, another opinion, what Rabbi Yosef Karo says, they poured all the oil into the candelabra on the first night, right? Because they had to, they couldn't rely on miracles. The candles burned all night, yet in the morning they found that the candelabra's cup were full. So you think, if you look over here, if you look at text 4a, we're going way back. It says over here, the second one, another possibility that they poured all the oil and the cruise remained full as before, right? So you think it's because it miraculously filled up. But you see over here, no. What he's trying to say is, they came in the morning, it was full. It burned, but it didn't burn. It lit, but it didn't burn.
Another question: if it was still full of oil, why didn't it continue burning rather than extinguish itself in the morning?
Because it's a good question. How come it went out if the oil was there? But no. By the way, if the oil was on, if the light was on, they would. I think they would blow it out.
They would blow it out.
I might be misspeaking. I could be putting my foot in my mouth here. Something tells me to prepare for the next day. If it was still lit.
Well, if they could take a pair of tweezers and pull the wick out.
Because I'm thinking in the summer nights, they would light the menorah in the afternoon. And it had 12 hours worth of oil. And they would clean out and prepare the menorah in the morning. That's way less than 12 hours. So I don't think, they always did the preparing of the menorah in the morning. I think they would extinguish the flame if it was still out. I think so. Something tells me I could be wrong. I do that a lot.
You?
Yeah, right. Right. So we actually find another story in the Gemara where Rabbi Lazar said, I once lit the candle on Friday night. When I arrived on Saturday night, it was still burning. The oil was not diminished. So we have another story where the oil lit and wasn't combustible. So now we can understand why the story of Hanukkah is so special. With Sarah, she lit the menorah. She lit the Shabbos candles and the stayed lit. That was a miracle. I call it a normal miracle, right? A big deal. Stayed lit, okay. So it's supposed to last for 3 hours, it lasted for 128 hours. Big deal. So God slowed the measure of consumption. Usually it takes this amount, he slowed it down. And with Elisha, all right, he kept filling it in. That's not a correct, meaning those are normal miracles where God supersedes the laws of nature. But for something to be natural and unnatural at the same time, that was unprecedented. Now we can understand why the miracle of Hanukkah gets so much press. So now we can understand. The question is, let's open up a different question. You would think the Jewish people would have to be on a very, very high level of spirituality or something to deserve such a miracle. I mean, we're talking about a crazy miracle over here. Think about it. In the Holy of Holies, no one was allowed to go there. That was a very special place. Only the Kohen Gadol went there, the day of Yom Kippur. And that's why in that room, this impossible of all impossibilities happened. But the miracle of Hanukkah, what did the Jews do to merit such a special miracle? So let's look at it. Text number 9. This goes back to what we're going to say in the Siddur. In the days of Matisyahu, the son of Yochanan Kohen Gadol, the Chashmonaim and the sons, when the evil Hellenic Empire stood against the Jewish people, they wanted to make the Jewish people forget the Torah and for the people to transgress the decrees of your will. So there were two options. Number one, given, right? We've tried the Jewish experiment. So going on, we outlived Paro, we outlived the Romans, not the Romans, sorry, Romans weren't around. We outlived the Babylonians, we outlived the Persians. The Greeks are just too much. Too much hate, we're too powerful, we're too much of a minority to have us surrounded. That's it, let's give it. Or the answer is, let's fight back. So obviously Matisyahu and his sons chose the latter. Now the question is like this. This is not the first time Jewish people have fought enemies. If you look at it, starting in the book of Genesis, not the book of Genesis too, but not as the people; those are individuals. In the book of Exodus, right? Jewish people come out of Egypt; they're attacked by Amalek. They fight, and then in the book of Numbers, they fight. They come into the land of Israel. The whole book of Judges, whole book of Joshua and Judges and Kings, they're fighting, and most of the time they win. Jewish people have a great reputation of winning wars. We've lost against the Babylonians and we lost against the Romans. But other than that, I mean, our batting averages, we're pretty good. We're pretty good. You shouldn't bet against the Jews. What did Jackie Mason say? Jews are terrible street fighters, or great in an army. Italians are great street fighters, terrible in an army, right? When's the last time someone crossed the street? A Jew, right? But Jews, you put them in an army, amazing. Italians, they can't. They lose every war. By the way, I have to send I found a video. I'll post on the community chat. There was a pro-Palestinian demonstration somewhere in India, but they don't know one thing from the other. So they're carrying Italian flags instead of Palestinian flags. You can't make this up. I'll send the video afterwards. Man. Maybe it was on sale or something. Huh?
Those poor Italians.
Yeah, exactly. so
They got on wholesale, that's fine.
exactly. Maybe, right? Maybe there's a surplus.
They were sold by a Jew.
Exactly. By the way, there's a video going around. The video going around of these Israelis Amazon merchants. Amazon merchants. Yeah. Amazon sellers, that is Israelis. They're laughing it up because they're the ones making all this free Palestine and flags, and they're saying we're donating 20-30% to the IDF, so everybody keep buying. Anyway, so we can't make this stuff up. Anyway, so getting back, so it's not like the Jewish people never fought in a war before. Why are we making such a big deal? The Jewish people won the war. So there are three types. There are three types of war the Jewish people go to. Type one is when God says, all right, guys, get behind me. I'll take care of it. You guys don't do anything. Just get behind me. We find out when the Jewish people are stuck at the Red Sea. Reed Sea, I should say. Sorry, not Red. Reed Sea. Stuck at the Sea of Reeds, the Egyptians on one side, water on the other side. They come to Moshe and say, what should we do? Moshe says, what should you do? be quiet. Don't do anything. Text 10a. Text 10a, last line, God will fight for you, and you, be quiet. That's one time. Another time is, and this is most of the stories in the Bible, when God says, don't worry about it. I'll be with you. You just show up. I'm not leading you. I'm right next to you. You just show up. That's why you have some crazy stories in the book of Judges, and in the book of in Numbers you have a story like that, and in the book of Samuel, and in the book of Joshua, the Jewish people showed up to war with, the odds were like 10 to 1, 30 to 1, 100 to 1. And they won. Right? Like in the story of Yiftach, right? Remember the story in Yiftach or Gila, where he showed up with 300 men, 300 against an army of crazy, because they did the test with the water. You guys gotta get better in your Bible study, right? And or when in the book of Numbers, when Pinchas leads an army of 12,000. Hey guys, hey Ivan. When he leads an army of 12,000 against an army of like 30, 50,000, right? So those types of stories, right? So you see in text 10b and then 10c, but then you have the war. Then you have the war of Hanukkah. In the other wars, the Jewish people merited prophecy, and the Kohen Gadol had that chest plate that gave them answers. So they knew God was going to help them. I mean, didn't mean that they all came back. And there were tragedies. The Jewish soldiers did fall, but they knew they were going to win. It wasn't a question of if; it was a question of how well they're going to win. But in the story of Hanukkah, there was no prophecy. There was no promise. There was just belief. If you see in text 11, now there's a guy, I don't know who it is. I don't know if I should call him a guy. A person, a man, who wrote the book of the story of Hanukkah very similar to the story of the Megillah of now, the thing is, by the time the story of Hanukkah came, there was no prophecy. So it's not like Apocrypha, where it can be considered to be a biblical story. But he wrote it in a very similar vein, right? But he records the story of Hanukkah with a lot more detail than you see it in the Gemara. So if you want, you can buy this book. You see Megillas Antiochus. You see text 11, Megillah Antiochus. So it said Antiochus sent letters, and they broke through they breached through the wall, and they made 13 breaches in the temple. And then look at the second paragraph. The sons of Matasio went to Mitzvah and Gila. They fasted and they prayed, and God came up with a plan, and they fought and they won. So what was special about this? This is the first time Jewish people went to war with nothing, just a dollar and a dream. They believed in God. This was the first battle in history like that for the Jewish people. Remember, in the story of Purim, when they fought back their enemies, Mordechai was a prophet, Nehemiah was a prophet, Ezra was a prophet. They still had prophets. This is the time between the first and the second temple. The story of Hanukkah takes place. A lot of people get this confused, because in the course of the year, Hanukkah takes place before Purim. But chronologically, it doesn't happen that way. The story of Purim happens earlier, 200 years earlier, before the story of Hanukkah. The story of Hanukkah takes place 200 years into the second temple. The story of Purim takes place before the second temple is built. So this is 200 years after the story of Purim. The Jewish people have no prophecy. They have no idea if they're going to win. And they have no reason why they should win. The Greek army is superior in numbers, superior in weapons, superior in everything. These guys are a bunch of ragtag farmers. One good reason they should win. They shouldn't.
They cut off the head of the enemy.
Oh, you're talking about the story of Judith and Holofernes. It's not why they won. It's a miracle that she got away with it. But another way to put it is, they fought a natural war. They showed up naturally, but the response was supernatural. Unlike, for example, the story of Jericho. The Jewish people blew horns, the blew shofar, and the wall collapsed. That's a regular miracle.
No, that's an engineering issue.
Exactly. That's Army Corps of Engineers, right? And there were some miracles where it says that God frightened the enemy, so they're all confused. Made the enemy easy prey. That's a regular miracle. Those miracles don't impress us. Come on, that's built. But to do something in a natural way, but supernatural, that already is. So now we can go back to our three answers. Our three answers are, come in. I'm finishing up. Come in. So now we have our three answers. Answer number one is that they put an eighth in. Answer number two, it consumed, but it filled up. And answer number three, it was there, it lit, but it wasn't consumed. So now we have three different types of miracles. One miracle is God said, I'll do it supernatural, right? I'll do everything. Miracle, the oil just magically, miraculously fills up. Another one is you got to show up a little bit. You put a little bit. And the last one is you put in your effort and you put forth supernatural and God responds supernatural. So now the beginning of the question is, when does a Jew have enough is enough? We give in and we say, God, too much. Answer it? Never. Because Jewish people, we are supernatural. There's never a point where we throw in a towel and say, maybe for other people it's too much. That's the normal answer. But we're not normal. Normal is boring. So we see this in the story of Avram and Sarah and Elisha and the story of Hanukkah and throughout Jewish history. So, like I saw a video, I think I mentioned this Arabic woman, I think she's Britain. She's the one on TikTok who was jumping for joy on October 7th, right? And she said, are you Zionist? Are you Zionist entity, whatever does she call it? No, she doesn't call it Zionist. I think she calls it the entity. Are you guys losing hope? So the guy said, losing hope? Losing hope? We're the nation of hope. Says, we outlived a lot greater empires. He starts listing, the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, and he's going. The Germans says, it's not a question if we're going to be here. We're here. The question is, are you going to be here? That's, if you want to destroy us, get in line. There's if you want to work, take a number exactly. Right. But if you want to work alongside us, you want to touch the divine. You get in touch with the Jewish people. This is the story of the Jewish people. Supernatural. We're natural people. We have jobs. We live naturally, but we're together with that. We're supernatural. So we never give in, because you're right. Naturally, we shouldn't be here. Okay. So we're going to continue going. Have a good week, everybody. Yeah. Go ahead.